You good, Justin?
Mhm.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's a little bit after 7. We are the City of Graham Planning Board, and we're here tonight to carry out the city's business for the planning board. I will encourage each one of you, if it don't go the way that you would like it to go, I want you to come to the city council. You've got another shot there to city council, who has the final say. We're just an advisory board. Having said that, everyone had a chance to read the minutes. I'll entertain a motion if there's no discussion about the minutes.
Mr. Chair, we've got to do the pledge and the moment of silence first. Also the meeting rules.
That's fine. Sorry. I didn't say that. Everyone, if would, stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Christmas, would you like to give an invocation?
Let's be reverent. Almighty God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity we can come together as a board and consider the business of this city. We ask you to be with our evaluations. We ask you to be with our decision making. We ask you to be with those presenters. Be with all those that are in need. We ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get back to number 3 there to the minutes. Everybody had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes. Any discussions or changes that need to be made? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Justin, I think I'm going to move the old business after we hear the new business. Let's go ahead with the new business.
Okay. Okay, so new business is a public hearing request to consider an application by Ben Green Hyconic Holdings LLC to rezone 38 acres on East Gilbert Street from I-1 light industrial and RG general residential to conditional residential. It would allow for 46 townhomes and 118 single-family lots. And there was additional review required to the extent of the changes from the previous plan. And this was tabled from the October 12th City Council meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Chair Ward and members of the board. Would you like me to leave my mask on or?
You can take it off.
Okay, thank you.
Would state your name and address, please.
Thank you. Amanda Hodiern. My offices are at 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro. That's 27408. I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you tonight. I am here representing the applicant on this project that we're at right now, Mr. Ben Green and his team. You have seen this project before. This is coming before you for reconsideration, which we'll get into in a minute. But I first want to just mention some new players that are here tonight and some changes that you'll see and who's involved in those changes. I, of course, was not here last time, so I'm coming in just with the homework research on your last hearing, but I'm here tonight to explain and help guide you through what changes we've made and how we feel like we've been responsive to what we heard from this board last time. Also involved is an end user who can bring you the type of project that we feel like you described and made pretty clear that the city of Graham is looking for in this location, and that's a single family developer. So we have Lennar Homes here, who's going to be the developer of this project if it's approved. And we have the team, the site selection, the acquisition team, and the land planning manager from Lennar with me here tonight. We also have our design and engineer, Kevin Williams, here with us to help answer any technical questions. So just wanted to make sure we had everybody available to get into any details that you guys wanted to address, and make sure we gave you a full presentation and analysis of what you can expect from this project. Mr. Green is still involved as he's an intermediary. He does have this project under contract still. He took your comments from the last meeting and went out and gathered this team together before you now, so that he could still try and bring this site to a fruition that was palatable for the city. And he's not here with us tonight because, frankly, if this is approved, he'll kind of do his intermediary thing, and you'll be dealing with Lennar. So he's watching at home. He's helped us get to this point, but he's not with us here tonight because he will not be your end user. That said, I'd love to get into the details. If I may approach, I've got some handouts for you.
Please do.
Welcome to flip through those at your leisure, but I'll refer you when I want to talk about a certain exhibit. So when last this project was here, I think you guys gave some pretty clear feedback, and you even approached what's happening now, which is, would the applicant go back to the drawing board and bring back a different plan should this board recommend denial? And that's exactly what happened. After the applicant left this proceeding, he did request a tabling in front of the city council. So the council has not heard this plan. Instead, it's been on hold while we reevaluated and put some new aspects in place. And we brought those changes forward, and the planning staff said, okay, the degree of change is large enough that this needs to go back to planning board, which I think is a good thing, because I think there was some significant changes that you guys wanted to see. So what's changed? The biggest thing is that now we have a majority single family project here, as you'll note, which I think was the loudest piece of feedback that I heard in my takeaway as a third party reviewer of your last meeting. So you've got now 118 single family homes with just a small townhome component of 46 townhomes. This is an entire project now that offers opportunities for home ownership. None of this is a rental community. So while townhomes are an attached product, they're a attached single family product. So that's still home ownership. It's still 4 walls and a plot of land that someone can purchase and start to build equity in, and all those things that I think are meaningful to community building and to personal growth and folks who want to come to Graham and establish that. So we've got a project that does that. We'll get into some details about the layout in a minute, but I think it does it thoughtfully and intentionally in ways that make sense for this location. We've got an overall less dense or less volume of units here. We're going from 453 units down all the way down to 164. And that, of course, is primarily achieved by the elimination of the apartment element here. I think this plan better meets the policies of your adopted comprehensive plan. We'll get into that later as we go through the specifics. And also tonight, as you'll see, and I hope you'll agree, by the time we're finished, we have for you tonight a more fleshed out proposal that gives you more of the details and the thoughtfulness that I think you were seeking last time to know, if you approve this, what is it that it's going to look like? What can we expect in our city if this goes forward? Before we get into all that, I want to first start with the reason we're all here, of course. Rezonings are about land use. So we should talk about land use before we talk about site specifics. This is a downzoning request. As you all know, of course, and I want to highlight, it's predominantly zoned industrial right now, light industrial. If you look at your map, the R6 portion, the residential that you see, is only that tiny little notch up at the top of the site, which is completely landlocked. So this site, if developed today by right, is going to be industrial. And at 38 acres, that's about 400,000, maybe even 500,000 square feet of industrial use. So that's not a small consideration. That's a big, intense use that could happen today without any appearance before this board or before your city council. So I think that has to be the starting point of our analysis. Of course, an industrial user here would set a much different tone for this corridor. If you look at your aerial in your packet there, it's tab 1. You can see there's a purple star. That's our site. It's pretty far from the interstate. This site is a straight shot to the interstate, but it's pretty far down. So to establish an industrial user of that magnitude and scale that far from the interstate is going to set a different tone for this corridor, and I think will be a foreteller of other things that would happen on this corridor if that's the way that it goes. Of course, you know, with an industrial user comes all types of different, site impacts from that type of user. You have 18-wheelers instead of personal vehicles. You know, you have trips at odd times of the day, perhaps at night, perhaps loading and unloading with the bays and the up and down and machinery type of noises that you don't necessarily hear or hear at all in a residential neighborhood. You have a much different visual design in an industrial site than you would with homes. You have different site planning considerations for your landscaping, for your buffering. So I think you get the point. Overall, it's just a much different feel, design, and component of the city of Graham that would develop here if left industrial. Now, this property has been on the market for about 2 years, from what I understand from speaking with the brokers. And in those 2 years, it has not been approached by a single legitimate industrial user. So I think that's telling us that the market doesn't necessarily see this site as an industrial site. I think that probably has something to do with its distance from the interstate. Similarly, or alternatively, you are seeing a lot of industrial growth in your city. You've got big users coming to town. You've got Senator Ralph Scott Parkway that's filling out with a lot of nice industrial space. And as we all know, while we sit at home and shop online these days, that those light industrial, soft industrial flex spaces are booming right now. That is a hot real estate market right now. So the fact that that type of growth is going on in that industry and it still has not come to this site should tell us something. It should tell us that that is not, in fact, the highest and best use for this particular piece of property. So we think residential is. I think the plan that you saw back in the summer obviously was not, but I think with your feedback, we're here tonight with a plan that does meet the mark for how we can change the land use to what it should be in an appropriate fashion. We have a need for housing across the state, across the county, and Graham is no different. I know we all have heard the stories anecdotally from friends and family about how you can't find a home right now. If you put your home on the market, it's gone before the sign is even in the yard, for over asking, for no due diligence, no inspection, all types of things that we never would have expected. So I don't have to belabor the real estate market that we're in right now for housing. Add to that I think what I have heard from this board on a number of times and your city council, and just from looking at the map, I think you have a need for housing in this part of Graham, south of the interstate. I think that this is a part of the city that doesn't necessarily have as much housing opportunity as you would like. And if you again look at tab 1 in that aerial, you'll see that there's not a lot of very focused and intentional development along this corridor. It's all more sort of a smattering of things that have evolved over time. However, in looking at that, you don't see much commercial. You see more residential uses, more spread out, less intense uses. And I would submit to you that a small scale residential plan like this, which is primarily single family, is a much better extension of that existing land use pattern than industrial would be. I think this fits in nicely, especially with some of the mitigation and compatibility aspects that we've added with our site plan. And I think that it creates a nice extension of your built environment that you've already got in this area, while adding things that you need, like housing, in a fashion that meets your growth plan goals, which we'll talk about in a minute. So if you'll flip to tab 2, this is the site plan, of course, that's been submitted and that's brought us here before you tonight. Of course, as we've said, it's primarily single family, a few townhomes. You'll notice that we thoughtfully put the townhomes in the middle. They're completely wrapped by the single family. So anyone traveling on the public roads or seeing the site as a neighbor, this site is going to look like a single family neighborhood. But just to for reasons we'll get into, we did want to include some townhome options here. So those are on the interior of the site. Not only is this a downzoning request from industrial to residential, but it's even more tailored than that, even more customized. It is a conditional rezoning request conditioned on this site plan that you see before you. So what that means is that not only do we have, if approved, not only do we have to build residential, we have to build this residential in the configuration that you see. Any meaningful deviation from that, just one more unit. Any widening of the roads, any changing of this requires us to come back before you and ask for that permission. So this site plan gives you a very controlled, tailored, and responsive zoning request to what your land use plan and your comprehensive plan asks for, and to what this board has verbalized.
Pardon me.
Certainly. So again, to hit some details, it's predominantly single family. You've got 118 single family lots, 46 townhomes on the interior. Again, all those townhomes, as you can see, they're on their own lots, which is what makes it definitionally not multifamily under your code. By having both townhomes and single family, you're reaching a couple of your goals. Number one, you're adding to the you're creating a multi-generational neighborhood potential. You've got people that can live here when they start out, when they're ready to have a family and have some more space, and when they're ready to downsize. So that creates nice opportunities for people who, move through the stages of life, but don't want to leave their community. They might like their church, their schools, their neighbors, be near family. And when you create multi-generational neighborhoods, it allows those stages of life to progress without, having to be uprooting to everything else you've got going on. The two housing choices here also creates a diverse neighborhood. A neighborhood that doesn't offer just one thing. And that's important for a couple reasons. One, it's speaking to, a more myriad and varied nature of needs for your residents, your future citizens, your existing citizens, your would-be home buyers. And I think you want to meet as much of that as you can. It's also creating different price points so that, again, as many people as possible can have that home ownership dream realized. And it's also creating a neighborhood that's visually more interesting. When you drive in and you see some variability in the streetscape, you see different types of roof lines, you see different types of facades as you come along. That's just more appealing than something that is the same on each block. It also adds better housing variety in Graham. Again, this goes back to optionality, goes back to meeting as many needs as the most diverse buyer as you can. You don't want to be a bedroom community of all one type of bedroom. You want to be a thriving and robust city that is woven of a fabric of all types of people and all types of housing. So these types of neighborhoods, I think, help you get there. And if those three things sound familiar, it's because they're straight from your adopted comprehensive plan. These are your policies that you as a city have decided are important to you, and that those plans act as a directive to developers and to people who want to come into your city and be there. So I think this plan, follows that roadmap that you've set out and brings you what you've asked for. This site plan also offers opportunity for open space and amenities. I've did a little arts and craft project, and I colored up the site plan so that you could see the amenity spaces that are allocated throughout the neighborhood, so that you can see the large swath of open space that you get just from the significant environmental resources that are on the site. And the way that this open space will be programmed and handled will have a lot to do with how the neighborhood ends up shaping out demographically. But things that Lennar offers, and Brian can speak to when he comes up, they offer pocket parks, they offer dog parks, they do tot lots. They also, we're noticing, I noticed this across the board, and I'm sure you do too, that people want just passive play areas now, a place where the kids can go and kick the soccer ball in a wide open space that's flat and level and safe. So by having allocated amenities that go throughout the property like this, we can achieve all of that and have a little something for everybody in their part of the neighborhood. And you also get, again, visual breaks in the streetscape, and that adds more interest and variety, and it just sort of ups the visual quality of a neighborhood. This plan is also a nice steward of the environment. You've got a lot of floodplain on this property. You've got a big creek that runs down the side, and this plan stays away from all of that. You can see that the floodplain is not impacted. The state of North Carolina allows you to actually apply to FEMA to fill or adjust the floodplain, but this plan doesn't ask for any of that. It's just nice single-family lots platted to the floodplain that doesn't need to change it at all. So by allowing that floodplain and that stream course to remain in their natural state, that's how you are a good shepherd of resources on a site. Of course, the stream is also fully buffered. And additionally, with this plan, you get not only a pretty low impact use with only 164 residential units, but it still is required and does meet all of the stormwater management regulations. So in other words, if we were under a certain threshold of low density or impervious surface, we wouldn't have to do anything. It's under the low density design rules. And what that means is that while you are in fact adding impervious surface, you don't have to address it or do anything about it. But this plan has enough of a critical mass to it that we are able to address our impervious surface. You see the two big stormwater treatment facilities on the plan, so that we're making sure, again, to be a good steward of the environmental resources on this site. This plan has been through your TRC committee. There were what I would call minimal comments that are all fully addressable and didn't cause any red flags to us or to your expert team. So it's passed. This plan has passed review and can go on to the next stage. All that said, I do want to remind and highlight that this is just a rezoning still. This is just about land use. This is just about permission to get more permission. So even if this is approved tonight, we still have to come back and ask you for permission for construction drawings. That means more rigorous review by your experts, by the state's experts. We have to go to NCDOT and ask for a driveway permit. That means they're going to review the traffic impact on Gilbreth Road, and they're going to tell us what turn lanes we have to have. And we have to say yes. If we want to say no, then that means we don't build the project, regardless of if you've approved the rezoning. So there are still a lot of hoops to jump through. The development process is long, and this is the beginning. So this is a project that just lets us know that we're all on the same page for land use, and we can go forward and ask for those further permissions. There'll be review that makes sure our stormwater calcs and our drainage analysis is correct. There'll be review that makes sure if we have to have any wetlands permitting that we get it. There'll be review that makes sure all the grading, soil and erosion control, all of that is where it needs to be based on your city regulations and the state regulations. And then of course, the final phase is before anything goes vertical, there'll be a whole other set of review for building permits and certificates of occupancy. So this is a long process that a development team and your city experts work hand in hand with to get to the end. So if you'll flip to tab 3, we talked about this submittal having a lot more detail to it and being able to have a lot more ability to meet your expectations. So as I've said, Lennar is going to be the end user here. I dare say you've probably heard of Lennar. They build in North Carolina and in the Triad at a lot, and our team will talk to you about that. So they are a local known quantity that has the experience and the wherewithal to develop a project like this to a quality and to a degree that you want to see, to a project end that is going to withstand the test of time and be well cared for and well maintained. They have a plethora of exterior facade options that you see in your packet there. All of these have facade options, and then they have interior floor plan options that you can see there. All of this meant, again, to speak to any need or any type of homeowner that wants to live here. This is a high quality product at market rate pricing that will work for this area, because you have a company that this is how it lives and earns its living, to make sure that they know what sites and what type of neighborhoods will work and be successful. So they've done that analysis here. This site has passed muster, which is a many month-long process, and they're excited now to be here and asking for this opportunity to join your community with a neighborhood that would be viable here. So I invite you to look through those and ask any questions about those of any one of our team. Also want to point out a couple of details. You see mixed materials on the facades. You see different gabling and roof structures. You see articulated panels on the garages. You see stonework at the foundation. So these are a lot of details that have been honed to give a look of quality and compatibility with the area that's so important. Also on the townhomes, I like the townhome streetscape that you've been given here because again, you have a couple of important elements of articulation. You have a varied roof line, which is not something you always see in a row of townhomes because it's more expensive. But you've got a 2-level roof line there, which creates a lot more visual interest. You've got all facades that don't all look like each other. They're a little bit different so that you get that continuity, you get a nice streetscape, but again, you get that variability that really makes a neighborhood sing and stand out. So if you'll flip to tab 4, moving from the homes to the neighborhood itself, another thing that Lennar does, and you can see when you go and look at any of their communities, is they do site enhancements. They do nice entry features, like you can see there at tab 4. These are well-constructed monuments. It's not just a post sign stuck in the yard. They are heavily landscaped. They're thematic. So you see the theme and the energy of a neighborhood carry throughout it, from the entrance to the amenity centers to the street design. So all of that carries throughout to make a neighborhood have a sense of place and have a sense of community for those who live there. This is also, as we've talked about, all the different green spaces you see are opportunities for the amenities to really add to this experience of living here. You'll have pocket parks, tot lots, dog parks, passive open areas, just green space, opportunities for people to get outside, to meet each other, to enjoy their neighborhood. You also have sidewalks on both sides of the street here. That's not something that older neighborhoods have, but it's something that your new code requires and this neighborhood is delivering. So that adds to walkability, it adds to community, and of course adds to safety. So those are all aspects that you get here with this type of neighborhood. I think these are all top level enhancements of a neighborhood, the type of housing community that you've asked for specifically and via your comp plan. And I submit to you that this plan does deliver and is responsive to the very solid and directive feedback that you gave this project when you last heard it. Also, I want to hearken back to, again, our starting point has to be our ending point. This is an alternative to an industrial site. If this is not what the city wants to see here, then the assumption has to be that the industrial is, and that is a much different prospect for the neighbors, for the community, and for the city. I think that's not the feedback that we heard from you. So I hope that you'll agree that this plan is what you want to see. We've got our team here. Kevin Williams is our engineer and site designer. We've got our Lennar team, so we're happy to answer any questions. And we look forward to hearing what you think. Thank you.
A question on the speaking on why the setback was set. Required setback is 25 feet on all 4 sides, and setback for front and rear was 20 and 5 feet on the side. Did you address why that versus meeting the required setback as defined?
Sure. Simply it's to be able to achieve the density to make this project work. As we've all seen over the past year, specifically the cost of A, land, and then B, building costs, to be able to just have direct construction costs to make these homes affordable for first-time home buyers or for those families kind of purchasing their first home. You're just not going to get the density required to be able to do that, and this is you know, in a lot of our projects that we do, this is a very, very typical type of size of front and rear yard and side yard setbacks.
The reason I asked is that I understand that, you know, reducing the front and rear setback by 5 feet on each, reducing the sides by 20 feet, 5 feet. You almost, you know, think about that commercial by Grey Poupon, you knock on the neighbors, reach out, you know, and I did some back of the envelope calculations. If you had, you know, 25 foot and all the way down to what y'all are prescribing. 20 on the front, 20 on the back, 5 on each side. And I came up with your calculations of 118 homes. But when you use the total acreage that you have identified, you actually could get the required number of homes. Actually, you could get more. And with a setback of 10 or 15. Now, what I was using as my basis is your one-story home and typical lot size was 4,000.
932, I believe.
4,920 square feet. And that's with the reduced setbacks. And that, of course, as you go forward and increase the setbacks, for example, using the calculation, let's say you reduce 10 feet on the side, 10 as well as front and rear. Using calculation that came up, you get 114 on the side. But if you use the total square footage of 20 acres, you get 172 homes. So you're well within, you know, satisfy the requirement of the number of homes you need to be profitable. And so I was just wondering why 20 and 5 on the side versus 20, 10 on the side.
And if I may speak to that, I think what this really gets at is deciding what type of community it is and which aspect of housing and you know, community vibe this is really choosing to be. So I think, in fact, this board had a discussion of, you know, there's all kinds of ways to add housing optionality to Graham. You can do townhomes, you can do small homes, you can do co-housing, you can do clustered homes. You know, it doesn't just have to be apartments. So I think when this team revisited and we looked at all those options and put pen to paper on different things, I think it was a very intentional decision to say, okay, which one of those options creates enough critical mass to give this neighborhood the bells and whistles that it needs to be successful, but also meets those directives of being something different and providing a different option for folks. So this is, you know, this is not something that you see a lot in Graham. It's small lots and the homes are closer together. And, you know, I think that it's a very, it's a type of subdivision design that we're seeing a lot more of now everywhere, but it's not the subdivision I grew up in. It's probably not the subdivision most people in this room grew up in, but that's due to a lot of things, different types of demand, different types of home buyers, different types of considerations, but also it's due to different engineering and planning principles that now we're learning it does make a lot of sense to cluster, to create smaller personal spaces in favor of larger public spaces, be it open space, be it amenities. You know, you see a lot of the reason that we're able to have, you know, these little pocket green areas throughout the subdivision is because there's not a house there. But yet we still need to keep the numbers at a level where we can build sidewalks on both sides, where we can build nice entry features, where we can build, you know, two level roof lines on the townhomes. So you want to hit that sweet spot. It's all a sliding scale. You know, you take from over here to add to over here, this side moves with you. So every decision you make creates a sliding scale. And the job of these guys is to find the sweet spot on that scale of, you know, what choices, what determinations leave you with an end result that in cumulative, en masse, in the whole picture is where you want to be. So you're right. It could have shaken out a different way. And this was a design decision they made to hopefully get to an end product that does have more of the aspects that you wanted to see.
Because, I have no problems. In fact, I appreciate the variety of homes you're offering. And so I was looking at the setback. Your single story home actually has the largest footprint. I use that as my basis. Okay, if I had this house, how large a lot do I need? 25 foot, meet the required setback versus 5.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
I was able to say, okay, the target is at least 118 homes.
Yeah, and some of the approach, that we look at, and Kevin could speak to this as well, is, we're going to look at the things that we're going to want to make sure that we do. To Amanda's point, we want to have those green spaces. We want to have that sense of community. We'll close 1,800 homes in the triangle this year. And they're not all in fact, none of them are in downtown Raleigh or downtown Durham. They're on the fringes. They're in Anger, they're in Holly Springs, they're in Garner. And these are the communities that we're doing because of the feedback we're getting from the people, right? I'll take a smaller side yard if I've got a park right down the street that my kids can go to, that we can throw the baseball around, kick the soccer ball. And so we're looking at those buffer spaces. To Amanda's point as well, we're looking at the entrance monuments and those bufferings that are going to be along, Gilbert Street, and saying, okay, these are the things we need to have. Now, what can we put in there to make this the community we want it to be?
So the 20 acres that's for single, that's including.
That's specifically for the lot.
Sir, please step up here if you're going to speak. If you would, state your name and address, please. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Williams with CDMR Engineering. Address is 8331 McClure Avenue, Charlotte. And to answer your question, all the data, the site data on this plan is specific to each component. So the 20 acres is specifically for the single family lots themselves. So what we try to do is we try to break out each component so you can get an idea of how much space is being utilized on the site.
So if the 20 acres is what the 118 homes will sit on,
Mhm.
being a 20 acres equals 378,000 square feet. Proposing right now requires 580,000 square feet. So it said, okay, so you got 300,000 square feet, but you could maybe push aside, set back for a little bit larger than 5. Okay, so yeah.
And I think, Mr. Chin, part of what's going on is a lot of those lots have extended depth. So you're losing a lot of that area in the depth, especially on those lots that are adjacent to the creek. So because there's no road system there, there's not an ability to get those additional lots that you're talking about without fully redesigning the site.
Also, can I add something else? Another thing you need to think about is the way this site sits in terms of the existing terrain. Everything slopes from the front to the back. So from an engineering standpoint, you want to try to work with the land, which is why that configuration of that plan is the way it is because it allows us to step this project down to the floodplain, to our low points, and bisect the property into drainage areas for our detention facilities. So there's another reason why it looks the way it does. I mean, this could have been done multiple different ways, but you got to look at how the terrain works. So what we're doing is we're trying to work the terrain that's there.
I mean, I came from Northern Virginia and the subdivision I was in, they did a very nice job, but you're right, the lots were small, but the homes were set in space so that you had a sense of space.
Right. Like for instance, in the center of the project, those lots in the center, I'm looking at the screen, I'm sorry. But what's going to happen there, there's going to be a slope down to the next lot. So these lots are going to be sitting higher and stair step down So the lots that are fronting Gilbreth will sit at a higher elevation. The ones across the street will actually have a view over everything. I specialize in hillside grading, and this is just one of the things you have to look at. Not all pieces of property that are flat are good. And then when you look at a situation like this with this terrain, with the significant slopes from the front to the back, you have to really strategize how your lot lines are going to pan out, which is why the lots are facing the way they are toward everything's basically facing toward the floodplain. So just keep that in mind as you're reviewing the plan.
Like I said, I was just wondering why the decision on 5-foot side setback and looking at the lots, yeah, 20 is one thing, but the reality is for some of those lots, your setback is. Wondering why.
Well, it's also a component of what Lennar can bring to the table in terms of the product. So the type of product that they see that's well fit for this particular site requires a smaller footprint.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of that and geometry, right? We looked at several variations of, this wasn't the first one that we came up with. There were a lot of different things of, we can put a road here and these are going to back to back, and then you're going to lose more here, right? You're going to have less density or you're not going to have the features that we want to make sure that we have.
I mean, I appreciate the fact that you come back with homes versus apartments. And what you're proposing is appealing, and the variety of homes and the models and such. Because that's one of the things that talking to folks here in the community is, where can you buy a starter? And I think that, lend themselves to that. Those folks are just starting out.
Sir, would you state your name and address?
Oh, sorry, I'm Brian Schwint with Lennar Homes. My address is 1532 Champlain Crestway in Cary, North Carolina.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Sharp, I just have one question. With your 20-foot setback from the street, are all the houses going to be exactly 20 feet back or some little more kind of an offset?
Typically, we offset those. You're going to get some natural offset with the curves of the streets. There's not a lot of straight that's going on in here, so you're just going to get a lot of that naturally. But when we have a straight row, we typically like to offset those 1 to 2 feet, so you're not kind of seeing that straight line going down.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Christmas?
Conditional rezoning, are we on this one, Justin, are we going for just the rezoning thing or the total subdivision package?
It's not for the full subdivision approval. This is just a conceptual site plan that accompanies the rezoning request.
Okay, so
The construction drawings and everything else will have to come later.
and that will be presented to us later. So now we're just the only thing we should be considering is whether we want to do a conditional
You're
rezoning
looking
on
at
this
the
property.
lot layout, you're looking at the amenities, you're looking at the street layout. Those are the types of things, the lot sizes, those are the things you're looking at.
Okay, okay. That's all I have for now.
Thank you very much for the detail and the orientation that you're bringing. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the creativity in how to use such a challenging site. The sloping land is a challenge. And I appreciate the creativity of how you're using it and the mix of housing sizes and presence of townhomes. I really appreciate that large combination there. In terms, you got me. I was thinking in terms of sloping of the land, and it's on a floodplain. In order to prepare the site, you're going to clear cut it, I take. I'm not sure if I can ask. Trees. We have for trees for erosion control and things like that.
I'm sorry.
Tree presence for erosion control and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we always have a very thorough erosion control plan. From what I've seen of this site and from the topo and the pictures, there's not a lot of trees on the site currently. And
Oh.
there's obviously vegetation that grows there, but not a lot of trees. Now, of course, when you get down to the floodplain close to the water, you're gonna have more trees in that location. But as part of our engineering package, we have full erosion control practices that are going to be put in place and inspected. And, we're a kind of a unique builder where we have in-house environmental specialist that looks and inspects all of our land development and vertical construction processes through it. So it's something very near and dear to our heart that we take very seriously on the environmental side. If that answers your question.
I live in one of the older neighborhoods in town, and our houses are nice, relatively close together, and I even share a driveway with my neighbor, which I appreciate. That we're nice. That we get along. But the other thing I've also noticed in our section of town is that there are street trees.
Mhm.
What do you guys have provisions for that?
Yeah, I mean, typically it's pretty standard practice to have street trees, which is usually one that's going to be on each lot. And then if you have a corner lot, we call them home sites, but on each home site that you're going to have, you may have multiple. So a lot of that's going to be dictated by, by the municipality, and then secondarily kind of by what our construction drawing package is going to put forth.
Thank you.
Sir, I got just a few questions for you. I want to talk about the width of the streets. What's being proposed on the width of the streets? I can't,
Yeah, I believe
this
it's a
blurred plan, I can't get enough.
Yeah, I believe it's a 50-foot right of way, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin.
So the streets are gonna be 50 foot wide?
No, the streets are not. The streets are, it's about 28 feet curb to curb.
And are you proposing any on-street parking?
No, sir.
The site, of course, all the single family homes have a driveway, as you would imagine, that can fully, handle all of the standard parking for a single family home. And then as you can see on your site plan, the townhomes have its own designated parking lot that meets your parking requirements under your ordinance. So we're not contemplating having to use any on-street parking for our day-to-day parking requirements.
Thank you. And the width of the lot sizes, what's your average width?
The average, the width of the detached home sites is 41 feet. And, the same thing we talked about with the streets and the setbacks kind of varying. You've got a lot of corner lots, so those widths, when you get on a corner, are going to vary, but minimum 51 feet.
So I'm presuming that you're proposing a two-car driveway, concrete driveway.
Yep.
And what's the width of that driveway?
Width is typically going to be 16 feet.
And if I could just clarify, 41 feet is going to be the lot width at the front building setback line, not at the actual street frontage, correct?
That's correct.
Because there's several lots that are below that
That's correct.
threshold. So
Yep.
is there a minimum lot frontage that you're specifying?
I don't.
Or would it
believe
just be the
so.
minimum that's shown on the plan?
Correct me.
Yeah, the majority of the lot widths are 41, with the exception of,
It's some of the ones on the curve.
lots 104 through 109 on the site plan. And in that particular situation, we're actually putting the front width at the front setback. Because those lots are so long, there's enough room for us to push it back, so we do get that 41-foot width. And that's typically done on pie lots, where you have a situation where it kind of pinches to the street.
I just want to clarify, because when we review the plans, we have to know what standards we're looking at, so.
So we're looking at almost half of the lot being covered with concrete in the front yard. If the lot's 41 foot, it's a little less than half. 16 foot of it's going to be concrete.
That's correct.
I like the proposal. It looks like it's going to be a runway out there to land a jet on with all the concrete that we're going to have. That leads me to my next question of the townhomes. when you get to the townhomes, yeah, I see you have individual parking there. And I'm presuming that that's going to meet whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom unit per spaces per unit.
Correct.
So how many of these units would you propose would be a 3-bedroom?
So as we have it specified right now, the end units are a little bit larger and they're 3-bedroom units, and the middle units are 2-bedroom units. That's correct. Yep.
And that I certainly, without getting all the way down to it, I think you have more than ample parking here. I just wanted to make sure that we're not going to be fighting over a parking space. In all of your units here, these are individually owned. The owner of the unit will actually own the land up underneath the unit,
That is
correct? Okay. I'm satisfied with that. Any further questions?
Parking spaces numbered, reserved, lot number or building unit number 1, these are your 2 places or 3 places, or how is that?
And so a lot of that is, determined by municipal requirements, but typically we do that where we have 2 spaces per each unit, and then have an allotment of visitor spaces.
I like the 4-foot green zone or verge between the curb and a 5-foot sidewalk's really nice too. So that's a good job there.
How about your mailbox kiosk? Are you going to have a mailbox kiosk?
Yes.
And
How many? Seems like you're gonna have to have more than one.
Yeah, there'll be more than one. We do them all kinds of different ways, and we haven't got to that level of detail of exactly how many they're going to be and where they're going to be at in this location. They're located on HOA owned property typically, and it's just something that we kind of work out on a site by site basis of where does it make sense to put these, where is it going to be convenient, where is it not going to stop traffic for the community.
Yeah, as a side note, when you design them, we want to make sure that the pull-offs or the parking areas are not on a public street. So they need to be in their own little area so that people don't block traffic when they're trying to get their mail.
Yep. And there's plenty of space in that townhome space to be able to do some of that very easily. And we're doing it pretty much in 99% of our communities today where we're doing cluster boxes, just because it's a requirement with the post office. So pretty standard.
And this discussion is a good example of the more fine point details that come at the next step. If we get to progress with site plan review, that's a chance where Justin and his colleagues will have an opportunity to let us know if it's not meeting the needs or the requirements of the ordinance, and we have to fix it.
thank you. Any follow-up questions to anything I brought up?
I have a couple of questions if I might.
Yes, please.
So I have a couple of concerns on the easternmost lots, especially lots 26 and 29. That stream buffer takes up most, if not, well, I would say probably 60% of the buildable area on those lots. Are those even going to be buildable lots?
Please.
Especially given the angle of the stream buffer on lot 29, that one's
No, you
especially
bring up a good
concerning.
point. You bring up a good point. One thing we want to keep in mind on the site plan is that a lot of thought has been put into it to keep it in substantial conformance. So there may be some adjustments to that road, in final design, but the whole object is to use the buffer as the benchmark for the site. Because we've got to comply with floodplain buffers. That's going to be elevation, hard elevation that we're going to have to hold during design. So your question about lot 29 and lot 28, maybe, well, not necessarily 30, but 28 and 29,
26.
26.
26.
Once we get into design, then we can see how that's all going to pan out.
So my concern is these people are going to have a stream buffer, an undisturbed buffer in their backyard, but nobody's going to follow that if it's part of their lot. They're going to go ahead and clear it, and then we're going to get the calls after the fact that they've cleared a stream buffer on their lot because they thought it was their backyard. Ideally, the edge of the stream buffer would be the back of the lots. More sense. If I was planning this subdivision, that way there's no question about what they can and can't remove on their property. It just seems like we're going to run into problems down the line.
And that's a problem that we've thought of. That is a problem. I mean, we're trying to maximize the site with a decent amount of units for it to make financial sense and provide the housing to the community. But that is an area of contention that we will be flushing out. So
And I think to extend the conversation, I talked about to increase lots or to change the road network would have to come back for another approval, but to decrease in intensity, and please corroborate this, to lose lots, if we just can't make them work, that is something.
That's an
that-
administrative thing that staff can do
Exactly.
because of the decrease in density.
And I just want to point out that that's something that does happen a lot. Of course, there's a lot more, as you're picking up on, a lot more fine-tuned engineering that happens once you get past this step. And if you lose a lot, that's the way it is, or if you lose a few lots, and that is something that happens. So I think that's something that this team is aware of, is a possibility in that area.
Yeah, and you've got a gas easement, you've got sanitary sewer lines running through there, so there's easements there. It's just a concern. I think it's something you'll want to look hard at. My other question is, have you given any consideration to putting in a walking trail as one of your amenities in that floodplain area, and then providing a public access easement over that trail and then connecting it to one of your sidewalk networks so that the residents can enjoy that as well?
We've definitely had those discussions. We're just not at that due diligence point. We're really where we've been able to kind of look at this thing and say, okay, this is exactly what we're going to have. This is how we want to program it. So we're at kind of that initial stage here where we're hoping this is what we have, right? And then we can kind of take those next stages. So walking trails are huge, dog parks are huge. To Amanda's point earlier, play lawns where they can stick a goal out and kick a ball or throw a ball and take their pet for a walk. Those are all super important things to our customers that we're gonna look at programming what we can.
The reason I ask, usually you want to try to nail down your amenities up front in a conditional zoning process rather than after the fact, since we have to review those amenities as part of the subdivision process. So it gives us something to go by if you say, there will be a dog park, maybe not here, maybe not there, but there's going to be a dog park. And, that way we can kind of hold you to those amenities as opposed to, well, we've got these open space areas, generic open space areas. We may or may not do something on them. That doesn't give, the city much comfort as far as what amenities might actually go in. Where they go in may not be the consequential area. It's whether they'll go in, I think, is more what we're looking at.
And I think that's a conversation that is certainly not troubling to us because that's something that we do anyway. You have to remember that a project that nobody wants to live in is a big failure for a home builder. So all these things, trees, amenities, are the roads too cluttered with on-street parking? That's all stuff that you guys are of a same mind on, because you have a shared interest in this doing well for different reasons. So I think that when you say stuff like that, the conversation is how to balance that so that it can be programmed appropriately for what the neighborhood ends up being versus whether or not they're going to do it. Because I don't think you have somebody here who's going to leave without programming the amenities.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of
I
making sure
reviewed
people-
Lennar's project in Hillsborough,
Yeah.
so I'm familiar with the product and everything. It's just there we had everything up front. We kind of knew what we were working with. It just seems like there's a lot of question about what, not the if, the what.
And I think what I would say is that we are asking for some ability to continue to move and be flexible as we progress through the process. You know, this is about land use now, and it gets more and more about site design as we go down the road. So, you know, if we need to talk about outside parameter conditions about amenities, I think that would be a good place to focus this discussion so that you have the commitment to know that it will be something. But we are asking for a little bit of leniency to say, okay, this project is really shaping out to the type of home buyers that have dogs instead of kids, or the type of home buyers who, you know, want a place to wash their car as opposed to go throw the football. And that's because all those things need to be on point and fine tuned together, or you're going to have a neighborhood that's not syncing up well. So we are asking for a little bit of time, you know, to fine tune those details, but absolutely, you know, I have no problem representing that you have a builder here who can give those, you know, parameter outside conditions that you will have programmed amenities and not just lawns for the HOA to mow.
That's all.
So do you guys have a development over in Mebane that you're working on right now by Lake Michael?
We do not have a development in Mebane right now. I wish we did.
I think Lake Michael's Meritage Homes, maybe.
I have no further questions. Anybody else have anything else for folks right now? Nope. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Boney? Sure, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, if these are still within the realm of land use, let me come to your last question. Not in Mebane, but do you have anything else in Alamance County yet?
We do not currently have anything in Alamance County.
Okay. The townhouses were pretty well described, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. Ms. Hodier basically indicated no garages, but a designated parking area. Do we know about what square footage and or price point?
The square footage, we have an approximation. We're going to be in the 13 to 1,600 square foot range.
All right. And a likely price point as of now, at least?
I do not have that for you right now.
Okay. And on single family, similar, 3 bedrooms typically, or,
We have 3 to 5 bedroom.
okay,
and,
square footage?
1,400 to
577.
All right, and a price point for a single family by any chance?
no,
Okay.
sir.
I'm just wondering one more thing though. Could you give us somewhere else? Like I believe the planner mentioned Hillsborough.
Harmony at Waterstone. It's called Harmony at Waterstone.
Waterstone is it's a project that we completed, different products.
Not these same models?
Not these same models. These specifically came from Bellawood, which is in Angier.
Wake County?
That
No,
is Wake County and Harnett.
Wake
This is
County.
Wake County, but it's around the line.
Price point down there? I know it's not the same, but
The beginning, the middle, or the end.
Right.
You
don't want to know down there.
About, you know, what's informational and what public hearing type of.
my concern though, Mr. Chairman, is the description has been that these are starter homes. And it seems to me the price issue is relevant in a description that characterizes them in that way.
It's not something that the planning board has authority over, but it's something that you as the public, I think, can ask. Whether they answer it or not, I think is up to them. So
And if I recall, Ms. Hodier stated it would be market price. So that's a pretty good indicator of the market, what the market is bearing for the area.
Well, I think I've gotten about as much as I'm going to get.
Discussion, anybody have any questions for Justin? Free? Wait just a minute, I'll get to you in a second, man. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask if anybody else now.
no, I had a question for Justin. Is it, I don't want to say normal, is it, I don't want to say kosher, is it acceptable to approve a conditional rezoning without all the specifics?
without all the specifics, yes. This is a conceptual plan. We'll really get into specifics when we do the subdivision review.
Okay, that'll come back before us then.
But it will, but it's good to have as many of the specifics as you feel comfortable approving, basically, or getting to a point where you can approve it.
Okay,
And
so,
you do have the ability to recommend conditions to the city council that they may or may not take into consideration.
but not at this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a conceptual plan that is far from complete with just the things that we brought up here. But the option to pick those items up when they come back with the subdivision plan,
Mhm.
okay,
You just can't put conditions on it once the subdivision comes in, so you need to decide the conditions now.
okay.
So if you want,
If we want a dog
you
park,
want
we gotta
them
say,
to commit to something, this is the time to.
okay, so if we want a dog park, we have to say dog park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else like to speak? Ma'am, if you would, please come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Linda Jones. I live at 1974 Long Dairy Road in Graham. I also own the house directly across from this. My question is, there's a large gas line that seems to have been taken in with what we're seeing on this property. What happens with that gas line? It's a large gas line.
Yes, ma'am. Any gas line or utilities would be on their privately eased area that the developer could not build on. So it would remain the same. The gas line would be there. There's numerous subdivisions throughout Graham that have gas lines and
Yeah,
stuff running right through the middle of them.
okay. So it's something that would never be able to be built over.
That's correct, unless the gas line was abandoned or the easement was abandoned. Anyone else like to speak tonight?
Justin?
Absolutely.
Uh, When we get, I'm wondering, the street trees, the dog parks, things like that, the walking trail. If we want that, now is the time to ask for it. 'cause
That
at
is
times,
correct.
other-
And with street trees, if you're gonna ask for that, be specific about the number of trees per lot. And if you want them with a specific separation, like 40 foot on center, mention that, because when they design the site, they're gonna need to know what you meant when you made your conditions and when the conditions are, if they're accepted by the city council. So try to be as specific as possible so they've got guidance for what you're looking for.
And what type is the landscape in our ordinance right now? What is this, the minimum requirements right now?
For,
All the landscaping requirements for the buffer area around the property?
so
I don't have my book with me tonight.
sadly, neither do I.
Type A or
see if I can find it. All right, well, that's not gonna connect. So the buffers, depending on, oh, that's right. Depending on what your question is, the buffers would, if you have like a specified, I know they go by, I think it's the R9 when it's in conditional, but
second, I'm gonna get to it. I'm pulling it up right now. Page 109. It references all of them, side, rear yards, type A, type B, type C, and D, planting yards.
Yeah, it's dependent on what the surrounding land use classification is.
Would somebody, one of you guys have an idea of what would be along East Gilbert as far as in the setback zone? Of what would be planted there, or would it be bermed, or would it be, you know?
Yep. You know, we haven't gotten to that level of detail. I mean, our thoughts are that, you know, that we're gonna have some sort of.
Mr. Weeks, would you step up to the mic, please? Thank you.
My assumption is that there will be some sort of required buffer, whether it be a type A or a type B buffer. We typically like to utilize berming if it's possible with the drainage plan that's created. But a lot of those things aren't at our fingertips right now without having a grading plan and those engineered drawings. But, you know, ideally, we're going to want to build up that grade and be able to put a berm on that to landscape it, to, you know, minimize noise and light and those kinds of things from the road.
And I just wanted to point out again that I do think it's important that we remember where we are in the development sequence. There are lots of other steps that come after this, so I don't want you to have the impression that this is a speculative or a half-baked plan. I think, and it's, you know, it's certainly not a back of the napkin sketch. This is a very appropriate level of engineering and detail to just ask permission for a land use. So, you know, if you just consider, you know, the many hundreds of thousands of dollars that will be spent to fully engineer a site and where that expenditure should be allocated on the development sequence, you know, it's appropriate to have to spend enough money to give you guys an idea of what you're being asked for. But then, you know, as you get the green light, then that's when you really start to double down on that resource expenditure to know that it's time to fine tune these types of details. And it also cuts down on the back and forth. So for example, if we stand here tonight and promise, you know, an exact dimensioned berm in a certain location, but then the lots have to shift a little to get out of that floodplain and the road network shifts too. And now all of a sudden we're back on your staff and in front of you asking for a 3.4 foot change in that berm dimension. So, you know, the flexibility that we're asking for at this point in the game, I would submit to you is an appropriate degree of that. And really does allocate the detailing and the analysis to the appropriate point in the process.
Well, may I? That's where I'm confused. Isn't hard to do. But you say if we don't ask for it now, there's no way it's going to come in later.
So you still have the development standards that exist. So the conditional residential zone is still subject to some or most of those development standards. However, there is flexibility for them to have different housing types, smaller setbacks, a different road network, some of those things, which is part of the conditional zoning process. Now, if you want a standard that's different from what the ordinance requires, or that is not specified in the ordinance, that's why you would want to specify it now.
Okay, so we could specify things like have a dog park.
Yes.
Like on one of your site, other presentations, other sites, you had playground equipment, trees, lot trees, street trees, walking trail. We could specify those things
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And
And
not,
ultimately, it'll be up to city council whether or not to adopt those
Okay.
conditions.
okay. I'm sorry about it. Thank you.
And I want to just make sure, I think that's right. And I like all that. What I'm trying to do is get us to focus on broad parameters as opposed to very site specific, you know, things that we then have to come back and ask permission to adjust, you know, as we know more. So I'd like to keep our land use considerations at, you know, at a level of, okay, what's going to help make this site appropriate and compatible and categorically, not.
Oh,
you
yeah,
See what I mean?
Not saying that the dog lot's gotta be, the dog park's gotta be between lots 13
There
and
you go.
14.
Yeah.
Just as long as there's a dog park somewhere.
That's all I would ask. Yep.
Okay,
I
Keep
do-
keep it categorical.
that'd be a good place for it. though, don't
No, absolutely. I do have one more question. I know that you just come on board, but have y'all had an opportunity to canvass your neighbors and talk to your neighbors and listen to any input from your neighbors there? Because, this is a one-time shot for us. If we approve what you're requesting for tonight and we forget to put something in, you're not bound by it. Now, of course, city council may adopt everything we recommend tonight, and they may not. They may want other things, but have you had a chance to talk to your neighbors?
I'll answer. We'd have a letter that's scheduled to go out tomorrow that I felt like because this plan was in direct response to what we heard from this board last time, we needed to make sure we were on the right track first before we, made anyone feel like something was about to happen. So based on how tonight went, we have a letter that's teed up and ready to go that'll go out tomorrow that encourages and invites everyone to engage with us however they would like and come out at that council meeting next month.
Great, I appreciate that a lot. Any further questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
In response to your suggestion, street trees. In developers similar to this, what spacing would you typically use?
In most of our developments, we're usually every 40 to 50 feet. And a lot of that is going to be based, usually those street trees are going to get pretty big over time. And so a lot of times if you're spacing them closer to that or too close to the public walk and
Yeah, please don't put them right next to the public parkway.
you're gonna have a much bigger problem in 20 years, right? When those roots expand and you're gonna have concrete shooting every which way. But usually that's pretty typical, is that kind of 40 to 50 foot.
And that lends itself to the one per lot that he was talking about.
All right.
And we're not proposing any trees between the back of curb and sidewalk. That's good.
I don't think you want that.
No,
No,
Burke would never
No,
let
I don't
me
want
live
that.
that down if we did that.
It's 5 feet
right. Any
or 4 feet.
I'm
any
good.
further questions? Thank you. Thank you. And I'll give one more last call. Is anyone else in the audience that would like to speak about this tonight? Or are you on Zoom? Is anybody having the ability?
We can't do a virtual in because it wasn't advertised as a virtual meeting.
Great, okay.
I do have one more remark that I did forget to mention is for future connectivity, staff would recommend some sort of street stub out to the adjacent property to the northwest. I did forget to mention that, but that'll be required as a subdivision standard anyway, but I want to bring it up now so that they'll not be blindsided when that comes in.
To the north side.
Yeah, the one up to the northwest there. I believe it's parcel 145101. They're going to have a pretty narrow access to Gilbreth, and typically with fire code, you want to have 2 access points. So it's going to help that site when it eventually develops out as well, which it will.
Mr. Williams, come on.
Yeah, with that comment, you're saying to have a street connection to the north?
Yeah,
Yeah.
west of your BMP.
Okay, so one thing you got to remember is that gas easement, which she had alluded to, you're only allowed to put 4 feet of fill on top of that. And according to the easement document that was written for that easement, you're only allowed to have 4 feet of fill, and you got to have some sort of removable pavement. So we're kind of restricted to have that access there. And then I believe there's another comment to have access across the floodplain. Well, that I guess I don't have that.
I don't think we made that comment.
Oh, okay.
We want a walking trail in the floodplain, but not
Okay.
access across the floodplain.
Okay, but that would be a possibility to the north. Unfortunately, we're restricted by that easement.
Sure.
So,
Fair point. And there is a consideration in the code that if it's technically infeasible or impractical, then that requirement can be waived, but it was just something that did come up.
Okay. Ready for some discussion here?
Sure.
Mr. Christmas, let's start with you.
I think it's well devised plan. I like the presentation. I like what Lenars could do with the houses. I've seen developments like this before. They look good. Houses are well thought out, well spaced. And I have no problem with the design, no problem with the lot sizes. The only thing I'd like to see in it is, okay, let's go for dog park, let's go for playground equipment. Let's go for lot trees and a walking trail. The lot trees, the city has a list of approved understory trees, canopy trees. So I think we're getting the tree list from the city of the approved trees. Outside of that, I think it's a good use of the land.
Jerome?
I think it's a great, I'm appreciating the thought process that's gone into into this development brought before us. I appreciate the thoroughness that's here so far. As we discovered in the process of this, a little bit more thoroughness would be good. The concern about the streets, the hardscaping, the wide expanses of concrete does concern me. I think that could be somewhat mitigated with the usage of the yard trees coming from the list from the city that the city offers. I think that also help mitigate future drainage issues that might happen here, since it is on a sloping area. We have the suggestion from the staff of including walking trails that are connected to the sidewalks and that have public access, public easement for them. I would agree with that and encourage that to be added to the condition.
With access to the sidewalks.
With access to the sidewalks, as presented here in the presentation, in the staff recommendations.
Dan?
I appreciate the revision to this proposal. I think it fits in with comments I've received from talking to folks in the neighborhood about homes versus apartments, to give folks an opportunity to own land, to own their home. I like what you've done. I had received the comment about, could the builder be from North Carolina? And I'm glad to hear that, you are here. The reason I say that, the person said to me, couldn't somebody from North Carolina build the subdivision versus somebody from out of state? And so with you being on board with this project, I think that's, North Carolina taking care of North Carolina.
Just make sure in the future, if they ask that, just advise them that that's not in your purview.
Yeah.
That's a simple answer.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, I appreciate the revision and the variety that you're offering versus some of the developments they're either on the high end and there are no starter homes. But this gives, the spectrum of homes and the number of bedrooms, I think fits into the growth of Graham. I appreciate what you've done. Having come from Northern Virginia, what you're proposing would fit very nicely up there. And I saw that, it's very livable. And so I have no issues the way you're addressing it. But again, it's one of those things of, if the opportunity presents itself where the side buffers could be, increased for some, not necessarily for everybody, but, again, depending upon as you design and lay out the landscape for the site, But I thank you for the effort you put into this. And I think that whoever decides to live there, I hope they'll find that it's a community they can grow their family in. Thank you very much.
I like to say this was very comprehensive and very appealing. I like this much better than a couple months ago. I believe he was here and it was proposed for apartments. I like this much better. And I work in the area down there in the Raleigh area, the Holly Springs, Anja, Garner, Wake Forest, Youngsville, Apex, Mooresville. And I see this type of developments coming, is booming everywhere in that area there. Yeah, the spaces are getting smaller. And I do agree with you. People like to be able to go out and throw a ball. They like the parks. They like the dog parks because I drive through communities and I see people out walking. I like the double sidewalks. That's something you don't see. You see them on one side or the other side, but you don't get them on both sides there. And I like that. And I just want to thank you. Very comprehensive, very appealing.
Well, my compliments to you as well. I think you've done an extraordinary job in what you've presented. My main concern is if you look in front of you, there's a wall and that's 10 feet wide. So that's approximately how far apart these houses would be. I have visited neighborhoods like that and pretty densely populated, yet they seem to get along real well in those neighborhoods. What I like about what you answered my question was the offset of the footprints. When you put these houses in there, they're not all aligned like dominoes. So if you could offset them, naturally gives you the impression of more space. And I would hope you would consider that in your design proposal. Other than that, I think it fits very well with what we're looking for in that area.
Thank you for your presentation tonight. I think it's a well thought out plan. I think it's a good start for us to look at and try not to tie your hands on something too comprehensive that you can't achieve. This is a one-shot deal for us. I know we'll get to look at it again on other aspects, but anything that we would like to have added, we're going to probably try to nail that down tonight in any type of motion. I hope we're not too tough, but I think we will be able to find some common ground there to work with. And thank you again for your presentation. Any further discussion? I'd like to just remind everyone that if you are thinking about making a motion, let's talk about the potential amenities that you may want or conditions that you may want to impose. Just remember again that I'm not trying to tie anyone's hands, but this is a one-shot deal, and if you don't say it, they don't have to do it.
Can we agree on a dog park? Or as a motion is concerned, playground equipment,
Absolutely.
appropriate landscaping for the buffer zones,
Absolutely.
lot trees, approved from the city list, and a walking trail connected to sidewalks.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that needs to be?
I think that's
I think that would work.
Well, I'd like to make a motion then.
We need to close public hearing also.
All right.
okay. All right, we're going to close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. We approve this plan as presented with the following exceptions. It meets the 2035 comprehensive plan, 4.3.1 land use patterns, 5.1.1 housing variety, 5.2.1 diverse neighborhoods, 5.2.2 multi-generational housing. It meets all those plans for 2035, with the exception I'd like to add on the conditional rezoning, a dog park somewhere on the facility, playground equipment somewhere on the facility, landscaping appropriate to the buffer zone, lot trees approved, taken, selected from the approved list in the city, a walking trail with access to the sidewalks and,
The street stub
oh, a street stub.
to the north.
If feasible.
If
Just if feasible, a street stub to the north. That's my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion before we take it? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Unanimous.
This is most helpful.
We gonna keep these?
That's yours.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ryder, I'll give you just a minute to let anyone leave that wants to leave, and we'll get on with it. Thank you. Okay, let's go to item number A, under number 4, old business.
Okay, so the city council requested the planning board evaluate the process for special use permits with the recommendation that they be sent to the Board of Adjustment for hearing rather than to the city council. One of the main reasons for that is it's difficult for the city council to take off the legislative hat and put on the quasi judicial hat. And that is better served with the Board of Adjustment, who conducts quasi judicial hearings. So this has been done in many jurisdictions in North Carolina, especially with the reevaluation of 160D. And staff will be bringing to the board next month the adjusted list of special uses that would accompany this. But for now, this ordinance change would be solely for the Board of Adjustment or well, for the Board of Adjustment to hear the special use permits. So there is draft language that's available here. You should have that in your packets as well. Basically, it's just changing the role from the city council to Board of Adjustment. So you'll see Board of Adjustment outlined or underlined.
Page 5, I believe.
Justin, since we're looking at this, can we add in here a section that if this is approved by council, that the Board of Adjustment will have their own attorney for legal advice?
That would be staff's recommendation as well. These types of decisions often are at a much higher level, and it's good to have the guidance of an attorney in case of appeal, or if there's questions that come up as far as quasi judicial process that staff's not able to answer. So I would agree with that recommendation. I'll send that forward if the board decides to.
Yeah, I
approve
just wanted
this.
to know if we could add that, and if so,
Yes.
we'll run it by the board members and see what their thought and process is, if they agree with that or not.
Agree.
Go ahead, Tony, excuse me.
I was gonna say, I agree.
Yeah,
Definitely.
if the city council doesn't want to do it without an attorney present, I sure think we got to do it without an attorney present.
Yeah, and typically if the city if the city would want representation by its own attorney, if they would approve it, likely we would try to put an outside firm on retainer for cases when there is a special use permit process. So that's how it's typically done in other jurisdictions as well.
And I would think that would be the best for the Board of Adjustment, since the Board of Adjustments is an outside entity of the city. We certainly don't need the city's attorneys representing the Board of Adjustment and the
Right.
city also.
It can definitely create a conflict, and I'm not sure that the attorney would actually do that. So
I know that we've been told in the past, when I've requested one for about the 5th time now, that the city staff, we have access to them. The city legal team, we have access to them, but they're protecting the city's interest. And the Board of Adjustment needs to, stand on the merits at the time of the evidence that's presented.
Correct. It's in the nature of certiorari. So the attorney, having an attorney present at that meeting will help them know the actual record for when it's eventually, if it's eventually appealed to Superior Court. So.
Great.
We actually had one time when we had the city attorney here that couldn't answer a question because he was.
That's correct. So he would act on the city's behalf, whereas you don't have anybody to act on the Board of Adjustment's behalf, and staff is not legal counsel. So it would definitely be in the best interest of the city to protect its appointed board and the nature and the interests of the city to have its own legal counsel.
Mr. Bonner, you have a question?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman, and things whiz by at city council, so I may have missed this. But I just don't remember a discussion by the council about this. Do I forget?
I believe this would have happened in August.
It's been on.
It was the meeting right before I got to the city.
And I was there and the
Yeah.
council kicked it back over again.
Is it possible to put it in the language of the amendment or that we will have our own separate council?
We could offer that. I have to think of how to do that. I don't know if we can codify it or if we just need to ask for it, but one way or another, we can present that to them as a package with the amendment.
Now, I'm only asking specifically, unless this board thinks different, for the Board of Adjustments, only anything that the planning board may have legal questions about. We are arm of the city.
Correct.
We
Right.
would talk to the city staff.
But certainly for the Board of Adjustment, you would
Board of
want to have your own
Adjustments.
counsel. That's correct.
So let's talk about the language we're agreeing.
Yeah, he's gonna,
And I think it should be codified.
I do too.
Yeah, it's almost a must. We make the wrong decision as a Board of Adjustments. And we needed legal counsel and we didn't have it. We could have done something illegal in our decision.
And we've had questions in the past about things, and of course, staff can't answer that question because we're asking for a legal opinion.
Correct.
So,
We can advise what we know, but we are not attorneys.
so since I brought that up and talking about that, do you want us to take a vote on that? That we want that added, or can you just do it, add it into the ordinance and send it over?
If you just tell me the specific language that you want, I'll add it in and we'll send that as an amended text going forward.
Then I would certainly think of some language like if the Board of Adjustment assumes the role of hearing these quasi judicial proceedings, that we be represented by our own legal counsel.
I don't know. I don't know what section that would be in.
I can fit it in somewhere. It may end up finding its way. I wonder,
Under,
I almost think that it's going to need to go into the, where the board is established. Let
110-143.
me take a look here.
And thank you for the page numbers on this too.
Would it be
6 or 7.
gotta look at it in layman terms. They provide us with legal counsel that is hired by the city.
Yeah, it would go under Division 4 somewhere, Board of Adjustment. I almost wonder if it needs to come back as a separate text amendment and be advertised as such.
It sounds like it should be.
I think it's in a different section. We probably need to go ahead and do it that way just to be on the right side of the law here. So, but I will go ahead and do that for your November meeting if that would work.
That's fine, but do we really need to do a preemptive change of a text amendment if council's not going to kick that responsibility to us?
Well, I mean, that's certainly a comment you can send forward. You could certainly table this again.
I mean, I really don't want to table it, but let's just go ahead and send the text amendment over, and if they don't want it, they'll shoot it down. If council, I mean, if the city council don't want us to have that ability, they'll shoot that down and won't approve that text amendment.
Or do we have to advertise if we're going to do a text amendment to the?
So it's in a different division of the code. The advertisement for this text amendment was for the special use process. I think the best thing to do, either I can add it into this section, we can squeeze it in as an extra part of this section and then move it later, which is possible. Because it belongs better in Division 4. So that's an option, or we can table the special use permit discussion until that goes through. Or you can roll the dice, send the special use permit changes going to Board of Adjustment forward, knowing that there's still going to be an application deadline and everything else. We might be able to get that text amendment in before it happens, but there's no guarantee they'll approve the text amendment either. So
I'd say leave it in section 4 and put it and just squeeze it in. Back to
okay.
Move it to section 4, which we
Start it in
Start it
section-
here.
in this section, and then eventually we'll come back with a text amendment.
I don't want to take the chance to roll the dice.
Right.
Because you guys every time.
Yeah, well, you know, we're gonna get 2 votes on it. We're gonna get a vote before the council changes it. Potentially get another vote after another council takes its seat and sworn in.
Yeah.
After the election.
That's correct.
We'd have 2 shots at it either way.
Okay.
All right, let's just start on, and
Now let's figure out if we want to do the text.
has anyone got anything on the text amendment that he's presented here that sticks out that you want to talk about in any in-depth conversation? And then we'll go through them one by one.
Oh, here. So I found a place where I can fit it in. Section 10.143.
That's what I was sitting here looking at.
For
Roll.
each application for a special use permit, the Board of Adjustment, supported by staff and council, we can say council, or however we say it.
Legal counsel.
Well, yeah, legal counsel, that's a good way to put it. Its own legal counsel perhaps might be the way to put that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then we can, so I can make that change here, if I can find that again. There it is. Staff and its own legal counsel. Okay. Easy solution.
Okay. No one's got any very specific in-depth. We'll just scroll on down and see if it's anything anybody brings back to their mind. If you wanted to start at, I guess, 10.141, we've got everything's crossed out there.
Yeah, so that's removing the role of the planning board, where the planning board would review they would review special permit requests and then recommend to the city council. That's no longer going to be necessary, obviously. So we'll just skip that entirely and reserve it.
Okay. 142.
Okay, here you're just changing it to be Board of Adjustment instead of Planning Board's recommendation, same sort of thing.
Okay.
Then 10.143 becomes the role of the Board of Adjustment. And then
That's for the.
here's where we would insert the legal counsel, its own legal counsel. So the
Okay.
Board of Adjustment supported by staff and its own legal counsel.
Our independent legal counsel.
Which do you prefer?
Independent.
Independent, independent, yeah.
And independent legal counsel.
If you Bob.
But to
or-
take it out and say we won't give you the
Brian.
city attorney.
That's fine. Okay, and when deciding a special permit, the Board of Adjustment shall follow quasi judicial procedures. At the public hearing, the Board of Adjustment reviews the application. Recommendations of the HRC, if applicable, shall be heard, and that applies to special use permits, of course. The Board of Adjustment, instead of whomever, may deny the permit, grant it. And then it just says Board of Adjustment, Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment, Board of Adjustment, Board of Adjustment, Board of Adjustment, Board of Adjustment. So,
We're good with 10.144.
same thing,
We're
Board of
good.
Adjustment
Yeah.
makes the following findings of fact, so. And then conditions added by the Board of Adjustment, and then it says the Board of Adjustment, so pretty standard.
145 is fine.
Same thing on 146.
46, 147 is fine.
147 is the same. This says the appeals cannot be taken to the city council. They have to go straight to Superior Court because the Board of Adjustments quasi judicial.
Is the final decision.
That's correct. And then the next one, plans approved by the Board of Adjustment, any other condition by the Board of Adjustment, the permit shall immediately become void and of no effect. Permit referring to the special use permit. And that's it.
All these look appropriate to me. Any questions about any of these?
Nope. Looks good to me.
Any further discussion about these? Questions for Justin? All right, do we need to vote on adopting these? I'm presuming we'll take a motion, entertain a motion to adopt these changes to all of these ordinances that have been presented before us tonight.
With the modification.
With the modifications. Entertain a motion.
I'll entertain you. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommendations by staff with the exception of one paragraph in section 10.1.3, where it mentions that Board of Adjustments will be supported by staff and independent counsel. This is in accordance with the Graham 2035 plan, and other jurisdictions and best practices.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. Any further discussion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you,
Who was the second on that?
Tony.
Tony, gotcha.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sir, I've seen you sitting out here tonight. Do you have some questions for us? Mr. Huffines? Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any non-agenda items that they want to talk about tonight?
Starting time. I heard some rumor about starting earlier instead of 7.
That was something I wanted to bring up. That's good. I'm glad you mentioned that. So almost all the other boards, correct, meet at 6? Except planning board. Would everybody be able to make it at 6 o'clock? No. So we should keep it at 7.
Well, no,
We can go 6:30, can't we?
I don't know.
Well, can you make it 6:30? Mr. Chairman?
I probably can be here by 6.
He's here the earliest of anybody.
Okay. Well, let's kick it to 6:30.
He's breaking down the door usually when I
Yeah,
get.
we'll split it with you, Dean. 6:30, can you?
6:30.
Can you?
Would y'all like to do 2 meetings a month?
Start at 6 o'clock, no problem.
I can certainly, I don't want to be the one to hold us out on 6 o'clock. If everybody wants 6 o'clock, don't let me be the lone ranger here. I'll just
Oh,
do my best and try to get here on time.
We can compromise at 6:30. I mean, if that's.
I'll make a motion to start the meeting at 6 o'clock.
Well, Mr. Chrisman made a motion. Do I hear a second? I guess that motion dies.
How about during the morning? O'clock in the
So
morning.
now, okay, do I hear a motion to start the meeting at 6:30?
I'd like to make a motion to start the meeting at 6:30.
So I'm a nice guy. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. All in favor? Any opposed?
All right.
All right, we'll move it starting next month.
Mr. Chairman, just to be sure that the record reflects, I believe Mr. Benesh is voting
I
no.
apologize, Mr. Benesh.
Voted nay.
5-1, gotcha.
Tough on me.
Anything else? All right, well, I'll just entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Hey, so moved. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, sorry.
Nay.
It's tough.
Stick around this guy.
That's right. They'll be in the dark, not in the heat.
Boys and girls. If we keep meeting, we're gonna have to get this air conditioner fixed.
Neither of us yet, but we could probably get it for you. So I have everything but, so I don't have like her colored version here and I don't have her aerial photo. But I do have the site plan. I have the stuff that was up there. So I've got the renderings for the townhomes and everything. I'd be happy to send that to you. Yeah, of course it does. Send
Who
rendering
is you?
to Tom. I've got you, Tom. You've emailed me. Yes, sir. Wait, no, what did you say? Oh, yeah, I got you. They said news app. I'm like, what app is that? I'm not familiar with that.